Have you ever wondered why some people seem to thrive in the worst situations while others fall apart? What if the secret to surviving life's hardest moments wasn't about changing your circumstances, but changing how you see them? Imagine being told your factory has just burned to the ground, a lifetime of work, reduced to ash in a single night. Most of us would panic, break down, maybe even give up. But what if you could smile at the fire and say, "They'll never see a fire like this again"? That mindset? It's not madness, it's called amor fati, the love of fate. Acceptance is a word we often resist. It feels like giving up. It sounds weak. But in reality, it's the first and most powerful step toward transformation. If we can't control what happens, we can still control how we respond. That's what Stoicism teaches us, to look at the world not with resistance, but with readiness. Not with fear, but with faith in our ability to make something meaningful, even from disaster. In today's episode, we'll dive into this Stoic principle that has helped countless people through unimaginable loss and adversity. We'll explore what it really means to embrace your fate, not just endure it. And we'll ask the hard questions. Can you train your mind to welcome misfortune? Can you reframe pain as fuel for growth? Let's begin this journey by looking at a real story, one that proves how even a blazing fire can be the start of something greater. Let's take a moment and imagine this vividly. It's a cold December night in 1914. The wind bites through the trees and a quiet dinner is underway in the Edison household. Thomas Edison, then in his late 60s, sits with his family. His body is tired, his mind ever restless. But he's built an empire. His factories hum with invention. His life's work, decades of ideas, effort, failures, and breakthroughs are safely stored there, or so he thinks. Suddenly the door bursts open. A man rushes in, breathless. "The factory is on fire!" Before anyone can process it, Edison bolts up from the table. He doesn't hesitate. Within moments, he's at the scene, watching helplessly as flames rip through his lab, his archives, and almost every valuable piece of equipment he owns. The sky glows orange. Firefighters are powerless. The fire devours everything. His son Charles later recounted standing next to him, stunned, overwhelmed, expecting his father to fall to his knees, to scream or curse or break down. But Edison doesn't do any of that. Instead, he turns to his son with a strange look, somewhere between amusement and awe, and says, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Let that sink in. A man's legacy burning before his eyes, and his reaction is not despair, but wonder. This isn't detachment. It isn't denial. It's philosophy in action. It's amor fati, the radical, almost unthinkable choice to love fate, to smile at what life throws your way. Not because it's easy, but because that moment is real and therefore usable. Most people would have crumbled. They would have cursed the heavens, blamed others, wallowed in grief. And truthfully, who could blame them? But Edison chose something else. He later told a reporter, almost with a shrug, "I've been through things like this before. It prevents an old man from getting bored." And he wasn't joking. Within 6 weeks, he had secured a $1 million loan from Henry Ford. Part of the factory was already back up and running. Within 6 months, operations were nearly back to full scale. Think about that. Most of us spend months paralyzed after failure. But Edison rebuilt while others would still be grieving. Why? Because he didn't resist what happened. He accepted it. He used it. To Edison, the fire wasn't the end. It was a beginning, a new canvas, an unexpected reset. That's the essence of Stoic resilience. Not some cold indifference, but a fiery determination to respond to what happens rather than being destroyed by it. And this is exactly what the Stoics like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius taught. You don't get to control the fire, but you do get to decide whether it burns you down or fuels you forward. Let's be honest, most of us have faced moments like Edison's. Maybe not as dramatic, but just as personal. A failed business, a broken relationship, a diagnosis, a betrayal. The fire shows up in different forms, and When it does, we're left with a choice: fight reality, or work with it. You see, the Stoics weren't asking us to like suffering. They weren't suggesting we become robots with no emotion. What they offered was far deeper and far more difficult. They asked us to see potential in pain, to ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? What new strength can I build here? What truth is being revealed? Edison could have raged at the world. He could have said, "Why me?" And many would have joined him in lament. Instead, he looked into the flames and saw a challenge, an opportunity, even, strangely, a kind of beauty, because think about what he really meant when he told his son to bring his mother. He wasn't mocking the disaster. He was marveling at the spectacle of life itself, the sheer unpredictability, the absurdity of building something for decades and watching it vanish in an hour. To the Stoics, this wasn't a cruel joke from the universe. It was a reminder. Everything is temporary. Everything can change in a moment. But you are not your possessions, you are not your titles, you are not your buildings. You are your response. That is the only thing truly yours. And in that moment, Edison chose to respond like a Stoic, with grace, with courage, with purpose. He didn't deny the loss. He just didn't let it define him, and neither should you. So the next time something falls apart in your life, the next time the fire comes, remember Edison. Remember that calm face in the orange glow, whispering not, "Why me?" but "What now?" That's amor fati. Not just enduring fate, not just surviving it, but loving it, learning from it, letting it carve you into someone better. You don't have to wait years to look back and say, "That made me stronger." You can say it now. You can choose to become someone who builds again, faster, wiser, with deeper roots. The fire? It can burn down what you had, but it can also clear the ground for something even greater. What separates those who fall apart from those who rise? When life strikes hardest, it's not luck. It's not talent. It's not even grit in the way we usually define it. It's acceptance. But not the kind of acceptance that feels passive or weak. Not the kind that says, "Oh, well, I guess there's nothing I can do." No. The Stoics practiced something far more powerful. They called it the discipline of assent, the ability to say yes to life, especially when it doesn't go your way. Epictetus, once a slave, once beaten and broken, knew suffering better than most philosophers in history. And yet what did he teach? He said, "Don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Instead, want them to happen exactly as they do." To the modern ear, that can sound like surrender, like giving up your will. But it's the opposite. It's taking back your power. Because when you stop resisting reality, when you stop wishing things were different, you free up all that mental and emotional energy to actually respond, to build, to act, to grow. You shift from being a victim to being a creator. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, wrote something similar in his private journal, what we now call Meditations. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle is the path, not around it, not over it, through it. What gets in your way becomes your way forward. Think about that. The breakup you didn't see coming, the rejection letter that crushed you, the illness that changed your entire world. The Stoics would say, "Good. Now we have work to do," and not in a dismissive, toxic positivity way. They weren't saying pain is fun. They were saying pain is real, and since it's already here, use it. That's the deep truth of amor fati. You don't have to enjoy the fire, but you can choose to use the ashes. You don't have to say, "This is perfect," but you can say, "This is mine, and I'll shape it." And there's something almost defiant about that. It's standing in the storm, not pretending it's sunny, but saying, "I'll walk through it anyway, and I'll be better on the other side." Now let's make this personal. Have you ever looked back on something that once broke you and realized it built you? Maybe it was the worst year of your life, but it made you more empathetic. Maybe it was a career failure, but it forced you to redefine your values. Maybe it was a heartbreak, but it taught you what love really means. With time, perspective, and healing, we often find gratitude for the very things we once wished away. So here's the Stoic challenge. Why wait? Why wait 10 years to be thankful for what life is teaching you right now? Why not choose today to embrace this moment for what it is instead of what you hoped it would be? That's the essence of amor fati. Not just acceptance, but embrace. It's walking into the arena of life, scars and all, and saying, "This is the fight I was given, and I'm ready." Because even if you can't see it yet, this moment, yes, even this one, is part of the process that's making you who you're meant to become. And in time, you'll look back and say, "That was the fire, and it forged me." So the next time something feels unfair or overwhelming, pause. Before you spiral into resistance or bitterness, ask yourself, what if this is exactly what I needed? What if this is making me stronger in a way I can't understand yet? What if this isn't happening to me but for me? It's not easy. In fact, amor fati may be one of the hardest things you'll ever practice. But once you start, once you begin to reframe every frustration as fuel, every setback as shaping, you'll find something incredible. Peace. Not because life gets easier, but because you become deeper, and that's the Stoic way. It's easy to talk about amor fati when life is going relatively well. It's easy to say, I accept everything when the inconveniences are small. Your coffee spills, your flight gets delayed, your internet goes down during a Zoom call. In those moments, we might even feel proud of ourselves for being stoic. But what happens when the suffering is real? What happens when life doesn't just bump you off course, but slams you to the ground? I had to face that question in the most personal, humbling way. I had a stroke. No warning. No gradual buildup. Just one day, my body failed me. The left side of my body stopped working. Gone. Like someone had unplugged half of me. I couldn't move my hand. I couldn't stand on my own. I couldn't even speak clearly at first. For someone who had always been independent, physically strong, active, and driven, this felt like the ultimate betrayal. The first wave that hit me wasn't acceptance. It was grief. It was rage. It was that ancient, desperate cry. Why me? All the teachings I had written about, spoken about, believed in, suddenly felt distant, like someone else's wisdom floating far out at sea while I was drowning on the shore. I felt sorry for myself. I mourned the life I had just lost. I wanted it all to rewind, to undo, to make sense. But it didn't, and it wouldn't. And that's when I remembered something Marcus Aurelius wrote as he faced his own suffering. Remind yourself of all the things you've already been through, and what you've already endured. It hit me. This moment, this breaking point, was the real invitation to practice everything I had preached. Not to fake a smile, not to pretend everything was fine, but to lean into the pain and find a new path through it. That's when amor fati became real for me. It wasn't a phrase anymore. It wasn't a concept. It was my lifeline. Each day became a lesson in humility. The smallest victories, wiggling a finger, lifting a spoon, taking 2 unassisted steps felt like triumphs. The smallest failures, dropping a toothbrush, tripping over nothing, needing help to put on socks, felt like insults. But even in that emotional tug of war, something was happening. I was learning patience. Not the kind you talk about in books. The kind that comes when your body refuses to obey, and all you can do is breathe and try again tomorrow. I was learning vulnerability. Not the curated kind you post online. The kind that comes when someone has to help you go to the bathroom and you can't stop crying because it makes you feel like a child again. And I was learning surrender, not as defeat, but as acceptance of reality. A new kind of strength was being built, not in my muscles but in my mind. I realized that amor fati doesn't mean you love what happened. It doesn't mean you put a silver lining on tragedy or pretend trauma is beautiful. What it means is that you stop resisting what is. You stop wasting energy on if only. You stop telling yourself stories about how life was supposed to be. And instead, you begin to work with what you have. I couldn't change my condition, but I could change how I responded to it. And in that choice, I found power again. There's a quiet clarity that comes when you accept your suffering, not with bitterness, but with curiosity. You start to ask, what is this teaching me? And for me, the answers came slowly, but deeply. I learned how impatient I used to be. I learned how attached I was to my identity, my productivity, my independence, my control. I learned how little control I truly had. And strangely, in letting go of control, I felt free. There's no rush. When you're learning to walk again, there's no pretending when your face won't move the way it used to. There's only honesty. Raw, unfiltered honesty. And from that honesty, something beautiful begins to grow. Perspective. You start to see others differently. The man walking with a limp, the woman struggling to open a door. You used to walk by them without noticing. Now, you feel their pain. You know their journey. You honor it. That's the hidden gift in suffering. It softens you, not in a weak way, but in a real way. It opens your heart. And that's when I understood what Epictetus meant when he said, suffering arises from trying to control what is uncontrollable. The stroke took away many things, but it gave me something rare, a direct experience of stoicism, lived through the body, through frustration, through surrender. And day by day, I've rebuilt. Not back to who I was before, but into someone I never imagined I could become. So if you're going through something right now, an illness, a loss, a change you didn't ask for, I'm not here to tell you to stay positive or be grateful. I'm here to say, you're allowed to feel it. But once you've felt it, once you've wept and screamed and sat in silence, don't stay stuck there. Ask yourself, what now? What can I build from these ashes? What part of me is being forged in this fire? Because pain, if you let it, becomes your greatest teacher. Not the one you wanted, but maybe the one you needed. That's what amor fati truly means. Not loving what broke you, but loving who you become. Because of it, you won't always get to choose what happens to you. The fire comes. The illness strikes. The loss is sudden. The betrayal is sharp. But even when everything feels out of your hands, there's one thing that never is. How you respond. That's the heart of Stoicism. That's the meaning of amor fati. It's not about denying reality. It's about embracing it so fully, so fiercely, that even your pain becomes part of your purpose. It's not about faking joy when life breaks you. It's about choosing not to let the break define you. Because here's what the Stoics knew and what we often forget in the chaos of daily life. You are not your circumstances. You are your actions in the face of them. What if every setback could be fuel? What if every failure was a forge? What if the very thing you've been cursing is actually the doorway to the next version of you? It's not a question of whether suffering will come, it will. The question is, when it does, who will you become? Will you let it close you? Or crack you open? Will you carry the weight? Or will you use it? Because that's the quiet truth hidden in amor fati. What happens to you isn't nearly as important as what you choose to make of it. And you can choose. That choice is always yours. Even in the fire. Even in the silence. Even when your world feels like it's falling apart, especially then, you can look at what remains, however small, and begin again. So here's your invitation. The next time life doesn't go your way, pause. Don't rush to fix it. Don't spiral into anger or despair. Just pause and ask yourself with courage, with compassion, can I use this? Can this moment, however unwanted, become part of my strength? That's not weakness. That's not defeat. That's what it means to be truly strong. That's what it means to live the Stoic way. to not just survive life's hardest moments, but to transform through them. Not to run from fate, but to welcome, and not to love the suffering itself, but to love what it awakens in you. That's Amor Fati. If this message spoke to you, consider subscribing to Daily Stoic Habits, where we explore timeless wisdom, one idea at a time, to help you face modern life with strength, stillness, and grace. And if you know someone who's struggling right now, share this video with them. Sometimes one idea, one shift in perspective can change everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for walking this path. And remember, you don't have to love what happened, but you can love who you're becoming because of it.